Hello imaginative people and welcome to Brainstorium. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dream punk and deeply weird fantasy author, and yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. As ever, I am your reliably zany inspiration mystic, here to talk about creative writing, brainstorming story ideas, and how to take your imagination into new uncharted territory. Today, in episode 13, I have a bumper show for you. First, we have a journey into space. Of course we do. It's a new short story inspired by an exquisite corpse on this show, written and submitted to me by a regular listener, Mariah, who writes as M.L. White. You might recognise Mariah's name as she's one of the top contributors to the Exquisite Corpse game, which as usual I'll be playing in the end section of the show. But before that, Mariah's story got me thinking about the balance of subscription, description and action in writing, and so I'll be exploring that topic in the middle part of the show, including a funny experience I once had in a storytelling workshop. What are we waiting for? Cue the mandolin! Mariah's story is inspired by an Exquisite Corpse result from episode 10 of Brainstorium. The pious wizard drifted across the universe with the eloquent courier. This is The Space Package by M.L. White. A comet flashed beneath the boat. Elan looked at its sparkling tail, at the distant stars, then at the nearest galaxy, leaf-shaped, full of golden light, and put aside his paddle. In this part of the universe, the energy would carry his boat, and the wizard could relax, meditate, read, sleep, do whatever he wanted, totally alone. Elan loved that time when there was no one to ask him who he was, where he was going and why, or tell him about useless things. Now, however, the wizard felt more nervous than usual. He looked around as if hoping to find a clue to the problem he was striving to solve, but saw none. The most recent mystery was what or who, and for what purpose, created a weird energy field so powerful that it electrified a planetoid and would make it collapse on the chaos territory. A very populous area, despite the normal gravity force. Elan had a chance to learn more, but only if he sacrificed millions of lives. That was not an option. He transformed the strange energy into safe light and fixed the planetoid in its orbit. Now it was impossible to discover the centre of the field. Elan had searched the nearest areas and found nothing. Further towards the black cloud, a dead planet caught his attention. There, Elan sensed some kind of dark power, found a piece of rock that was the source of it, and was now on his way to the most secret place his order possessed so he could hide it, despite his tiredness. From the first moment, the situation reminded the wizard of his only defeat. Back then, it was a moon falling onto its planet, and Elan almost died trying to save both. Since he learned the moon fell because an artifact created a gravity wave, the wizard had begun to consider any artifacts as dangerous. He would not be surprised to learn his cargo was to blame for the danger that was literally hanging above the chaotic's heads. But whether or not it was really the artifact that caused the problem with the planetoid, he had to put it in a place where it would be unable to cause damage. The wizard cast a glance down to his feet. On the bottom of the boat, wrapped in his old cloak, there lay a small black stone. Elan surrounded it with his magic to hide it from creatures who could sense such things, for the stone emitted waves of bitterness. The magic worked. The cloak guarded the artifact like a dog, and the stone remained powerless. The wizard told himself to forget about that menace until he would arrive. The hideout was one of the places Elan loved, and the thought of it calmed him a little. It was a deep cave in a lonely planet, about 2 days' boat flight from here. For now, Elan could rest. No effort would increase the boat's speed much in this part of space anyway. A bright light of a wandering sun shone in his eyes, so it was impossible to sit straight and meditate. Nothing would make the wizard interrupt his meditation, but now the universe was telling him not to go so far into his inner world. Elan accepted it and found a more comfortable position. Even so, his mind was still full of the recent events. There's the whole order, and I can't count on anyone, he thought, clutching onto the edge of the boat as it lurched to one side. Why are they so stubborn? I am the Wizard Supreme, and they don't listen to what I say. Every child thinks they know the code better than I do. They have no idea of the dangers hanging over us. He stopped and looked at the cargo suspiciously. The artifact might influence one's mood and be the cause of his anger and nervousness, though Elan had plenty other reasons to feel that way. He was responsible for the safety of the entire universe. Only the members of the Order knew it. For anyone else, he was just an old, almost powerless wizard. Many treated him with disrespect, and Elan had to bear it all, as his true role was top secret. Other wizards seemed to forget what his post really meant. He travelled across space to control all parts of the Order, risked his life, saving galaxies and dimensions, and no one cared. Elan had forgotten what it means to be at home, and found that peaceful moments of being alone in the middle of space are the best to clear his thoughts and regain his strength. Stars were shining everywhere around him, making his snowflake-shaped medallion glint. The boat drifted with the energy flow, swaying a little. Nothing promised a new catastrophe in the near future, and the wizard relaxed and cherished every moment of rest. "Please wait for me," a weak voice came from behind. Elan turned his head and saw a flaming bird or something like it, seemingly tired. It tried to catch up with his boat, but its wings moved slower and heavier with each second, its brightly coloured feathers growing dim. The energy of the zone would not allow the wizard to create anything big like another boat. He thought about throwing a net, but that seemed rude and might hurt the being. Elan stood up in his boat, spread his arms toward the energy flows, and started directing them to support the bird's wings. However, the current was too strong. Elan could not control it for longer, and almost fell in his boat, exhausted. The wizard looked back to where the bird desperately fought a side flow that drew it away from its course, and he frowned. Elan did not want to let a stranger onto his boat, especially because of the small but dangerous cargo lying in it, and he searched for another way to help the creature. The energy flow hauled it further to a dark nebula where super winds spun around a forming star. Tired as it was, the bird would not be able to fly off once it got into that zone. With a wave of his hand, Elan conjured a long rope and threw it to the creature. The bird grabbed it. Elan pulled the rope, using magic to make it shorter, and helped the creature get onto the boat. "I am forever grateful," said his unexpected companion, folding one wing then another. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm a space courier. My name is Paragus Andante." "You travel far, I see," said Elan. "Yes, unfortunately this time it was in vain. I had a small package to deliver, and thank sacred flames it wasn't heavy, to one of the most remote sectors. And the planet is empty. It is the emptiest place of all the empty places that I have ever seen. I'm unable to get my mind around who would ask our company to deliver a package there." "So it will be returned to the person who sent it?" the wizard asked without interest, and at once got annoyed with himself for what seemed a meaningless nicety. Even so, his intuition nagged at him that he needed to learn more about the package's fate. "No," Paragus said plaintively. "The sender is unknown. Unless someone asks us, we can do nothing about it, It'll probably get lost eventually. There are so many things to deliver. In silence, they watched gorgeous constellations moving past. A big planet came closer, strange spots appearing and disappearing on its surface. Elan noticed that Paragus was excited, as if he travelled for the first time. "I've worked for so long," the courier said, "but the universe is a miracle." "It is." "May I ask you a personal question? How old are you?" Elan glanced at him. "I'm the most ancient wizard in the universe. It's barely older than me. I am the keeper of the code now, and it is a tiresome job at times like these." "The code of the wizards! I read about it when I was young. Why is it so difficult?" Slightly annoyed by the questions, Elan stood silent for a minute. He waved away an approaching asteroid and whispered a word, making it change its direction. "Too many misunderstand the rules," he said finally. "My teachers did too. I had some experience. It was a disaster, but it helped me see the truth. I cannot forsake it, and others do not want to learn anew what the code means." Paragus waited for the wizard to say something else, but the wizard wished to be alone again as soon as possible. He sensed something odd about the courier and the whole situation, though. On the surface of it, it didn't seem particularly special. The sender could have just made a mistake with the address. "I wonder what was in that package and why you found the planet empty," Elan said thoughtfully. "It's not my concern, yet I worry for reasons unknown." "The wizard's intuition!" Paragus gaped at him with respect and took his bag off his neck. "You can have a look at it. Normally I would not let a stranger see what I carry. You're different. I hope I'm not wrong." "Why is that attached to your bag?" Elan asked, pointing with shock and disgust at several pendants tied together, each made of grey stone. "It's my lucky charm. Actually, it helps me fly through dangerous areas." "Didn't you know that artifacts like this can drain you of energy?" said Elan. "I know," Paragus said. "I heard legends and recognised it when I found it. I just couldn't part with it. At first it seemed to sap my energy. It was difficult to fly, but with time it stopped feeling heavy. It's like one of my feathers now. I fly faster and don't feel so tired. I'm not a wizard, but I think an artifact can change, or has more than one way to be used." With his permission, Elan took the string of pendants and listened to his feelings. To his surprise, the artifact was rather pleasant to touch. It felt cosy and safe, and was giving him the sense of being in a very beautiful place. "You're not wrong," Elan returned the artifact. "It is absolutely safe now. You can continue using it. What changed it?" "Honestly, I don't know why it changed. I just carried it with me, whatever I did. It's been on some wonderful places with me, and it always makes me feel calm and helps me find my way." The wizard nodded thoughtfully. "A helpful artifact. Interesting. Oh, I wanted to show you the package." The courier pulled from his backpack a small black box. Elan touched it carefully. Nothing showed on the surface, no sign of what could be inside. The wizard opened it, and kind, warm light beamed onto their faces. "It's so beautiful," Paragus whispered, looking at the shiny sphere with myriads of white, green, yellow, red and blue tiny dots circling within in a complex order. "What is it?" "This is a new universe." Elan's voice betrayed his foreboding about the sphere. "I don't understand," said Paragus, perplexed. "We're in the universe." "One of them. This is a future universe. If it becomes as big as it should within hours, they will both perish." "Then I cannot return with it. No one would know what to do with the whole universe, unless you do." "No," said Elan. "Take it and find another wizard from my order. Our temples are everywhere. You can easily find one. There's always a bunch of wizards who can take care of it. Choose anyone." Many of them will be happy to do with what is right for it. You cannot leave it, objected Paragus. A younger wizard could make a mistake. You would not, and you are obviously the only one who follows the right way with your code. It is your destiny. Elan gave him a surprised look. Your feathers are too bright for a simple courier. You have something important ahead. Maybe you are right. Maybe. It needs space to grow. So, this is my new mission. Elan didn't say anything else, and Paragus was too shocked and intimidated to ask him what he intended to do. The courier left the boat at the edge of a misty zone, ready to fly again, and the wizard turned it to a destination known only to him, with the future universe in his pocket. Elan saw it was no accident that he'd found the black stone at this time. There was clearly more to artifacts than the code could say. Little did the wizard know that he'd have to change his opinion about the artifact drastically and use it very soon. Wow, I really enjoyed that. I hope you did too. And it all started with the Exquisite Corpse. The pious wizard drifted across the universe with the eloquent courier. It feels like we've had a glimpse into a vast world full of complex magic and artifacts. What are artifacts? Are they at the base of the chaos that's been going on? What are they really capable of? And what will happen next? Will Elan be able to hide it safely away, this black stone? And what will happen to this future universe? This, what we've just heard, it feels like the tip of an iceberg, the sparkly edge of something that is much bigger. There's so much world building going on in the background of this story. Well, to tell you a bit more about M.L. White, she writes high fantasy, though often she doesn't follow the usual tropes, and she chooses characters that go beyond these. For example, I know she's been working on a story about a ghost elf who becomes a spirit of the forest. As the space package has lots of world building in it, when reviewing the first draft of this story, both Mariah and I had some head-scratching moments as to how much background detail should go in and where. I've never written high fantasy myself, so I find it harder to know where to draw the line with descriptions than I usually would with, say, one of my own stories. And I didn't want to interfere too much with someone else's story when I'm not in the position of a professional editor preparing it for formal publication. And I wanted to listen to the high fantasy author. As Mariah said afterwards, balancing description with action was really tricky, and from my experience with this story I can tell the issue is not only about including too much description, it's also about lack of it sometimes. An author knows and understands what a reader doesn't. And where the writer doesn't need any description, the audience may want some. Well, considering English is Mariah's second language, and this is the third story she has ever drafted in English, I think you'll agree with me. The space package is an astonishing achievement. Thank you so much, Mariah, for sending me the story and letting me share it with everyone. If you're interested in Mariah's stories, she hasn't yet set up her website, but you can find on her on Twitter. I'll give you her Twitter ID, but it's a little bit long. It's at Mariah94350720. But if that's a lot to write down, just pop over to annatizard.com, go to the comments section on the Brainstorium page, so just scroll down underneath the recordings, and her comment comes up at the top of all the comments, and I've just put her Twitter ID there, so you just copy and paste it from there. But now that we're on the topic of description and how much to include in a story, I want to talk a little bit more about this. As mentioned, I don't have personal experience of writing high fantasy myself or handling such a complex level of world building. But the fact is, as writers, even of short stories, we all do a certain amount of world building. Even if our story is set in this world or a magically enhanced version of this world, at the very least, we need to know our characters and to find a way to present, or at least hint at, a situation that has led to the current situation where we're at the beginning of the story. The reader may enjoy some background at the beginning, but ultimately we all want to get to the action part as soon as possible. And so the best way is always to interweave that information into the action as much as possible and not take too many breaks from the action. We have to make decisions. What information really needs to be in there? What's vital for the reader to know? Or what really enriches the story? Of all the different types and techniques of writing you have, there's action, description. Sometimes you have the thoughts of the character interjecting like we did here. Dialogue. Again, there are some stories that manage without this, but it's quite common to have dialogue in there. And sometimes authorial comment, where the narrator steps in and says something without the characters knowing about it. Like that bit at the end of Mariah's story where I got to say, "Little did he know." That's an authorial comment. Very broadly speaking, all of these types of writing or techniques can be divided into two main camps, description or action. Which camp they fall into really depends on what a particular phrase or sentence achieves, though usually these elements are intertwined to some extent. Dialogue is usually closer to action, I'd say, because unless a person is rambling onto themselves or describing something in a lot of detail, dialogue tends to pick up the pace and gives us a sense of movement and change. When the characters interact with each other, change is always happening, though perhaps at a subtle level. And change must happen in stories, otherwise you'll have a description of a moment, and that's not a story. Maybe it's a poem. It might be very beautiful. But without change, it's not a story. On the other hand, description is also really important because it sort of beds us into the story, helps us understand the characters, and enriches the action too, so we can imagine it more clearly. Whether we're being given visual images, sounds, sensations, even smells to make the action vivid. It's this interaction between description and action, the interweaving of the two, that helps create the feel and the pace of the story. But there is something useful and very striking when you try to separate the two and examine them in isolation. I once went to a storytelling workshop, and this was an oral storytelling workshop, so I felt a bit out of my depth without a pen in my hand. We did this weird exercise where the workshop leader told us a fairly simple story about a city that locked its gates every night in fear of a giant that lived nearby. In the workshop, we were split into twos, and in each couple, one person had to start retelling the story to the other. Now, so the storytelling person had to try and stick to just describing things whenever the listener yelled description, or telling just the action whenever their partner said action. It was really difficult and weird and funny as well. Whenever I had to tell just the action, everything raced forward way too quickly. There wasn't a lot I could say besides, and then. Like, the boy heard a sound outside his window, and then he decided to leave the house without telling anyone to go and see the giant. He shut the door behind him and started walking towards the gate. It was turning into a list of things, and I was running out of story very fast. But equally, when I had to just describe things without anything actually happening, that was really difficult to do as well, but in a completely different way. He shivered, hearing the echo of his feet on the stones. He looked up, frowning. He, scratched his nose or something. It was hard to just keep coming up with things on the spot like that, while I was excruciatingly aware that the story had ground to a halt. Nothing was happening. Of course, as I mentioned, in story writing, and whether that's orally or, actual writing, we are constantly interweaving both description and action. Even in a single sentence, we'll often be doing this. But it was a really interesting exercise to try to separate the two as far as possible and see what happened. It increased my awareness of what the two elements do, separately and in interplay. One thing I've really come to appreciate through that workshop, but also through experience, is how you can affect the pace and sense of timing through carefully laid description. You can create a useful pause in your story by inserting just a couple of sentences of description, a short paragraph maybe. When you've just dropped a big event or life-shattering realisation on the character, or when you just feel that the character or the reader needs a moment to digest something that's happened, you can give them that moment to catch their breath by popping in a little bit of description that carries the atmosphere of what's just happened, maybe even deepens it. And you can also weave in some thoughts of the main character so that we are with them as they react to this. Description on its own slows things down, so it's good to use it mindfully and carefully to create a sense of pause where you think that's needed, or suspense, because by holding back the action that little bit, you can maximise on the reader not yet knowing what's going to happen next, and give hints or even false impressions of what might happen next. To sort of be in that moment of hesitation is to reflect on what is possible, what might happen next. Description can really enrich those moments and ensure they don't pass by too quickly. Well, lots to think about, so get writing and get interweaving. But first, we need some story ideas. First, we need the socks of destiny. Right, I don't know about you, but I've got my pen and pad ready. Let's see what happens. What do we have for our first word? This is from Anonymous, and it is brutal. Ooh. Who or what was brutal? This is from Ian Nathaniel Cohen. Woodchuck. A brutal woodchuck. Sounds like such a cute little thing. It's I did have to look this up actually. It's a North American marmot. I knew it would be small and fluffy, but sometimes I just like to check exactly how small and how fluffy these things are. So, what did this woodchuck get up to? This is from Twitter ID Tess_2020. picked a poisonous plant for. That does sound quite brutal. So a woodchuck is trying to poison someone, it would seem, for reasons of brutality. Right, what's this? Ah, this is from me. Watery. Okay. I don't know what I was thinking when I read that word, but it doesn't matter. What or who was watery, and in what way can something be watery? Perhaps they're tearful or something. Ah, this is from Paul Thomas. Burgomaster. Okay, this I had to look up and I had to write down, just scribble along the edges of my pieces of paper because I didn't know. It's the mayor of Dutch, Flemish, German or Austrian or Swiss towns. So, a watery burgomaster. So, either a burgomaster who has been splashed by something or is tearful. That's something to sort of work out on its own. How did this person become watery? I need to write this down and see how the sentence comes together. So the brutal woodchuck picked a poisonous plant for the watery burgomaster. Okay, I think it's time for tea, perhaps. I'm hoping this may help just a little bit. There we go. Right. It's odd that the woodchuck is brutal. It's a coincidence that it's causing harm to the burgomaster or mayor. So there is an undercurrent of violence to the story, but brutality, the word brutal is normally associated with sort of outward physical violence, like beating someone up, rather than poisoning someone, which is a far more sneaky way to murder someone. Takes more forethought. I wonder, at first I just assumed that the woodchuck is wanting to kill the burgomaster, but actually it's picked a poisonous plant for the watery burgomaster. So I wonder if it's actually the mayor, the burgomaster, who is wanting to kill someone, and he or she has employed this woodchuck to find a specialist poisonous plant to do the job. A thug woodchuck, if you will, to do the dirty work for them. I wonder who a burgomaster would want to kill. But it's true that if someone who has got, who's got political power, who's in the public eye, they're not going to want to take the risk of being, if they want to murder someone, that they're not going to want to risk being seen somewhere, actually, performing the deed. They're going to employ someone else. They've got a bit of power, a bit of money. They're going to get someone else to do their dirty work for them. And who else to choose than a brutal woodchuck? Because obviously, woodchucks, they know where all these weeds and strange plants grow. I wonder if that's why the burgomaster is watery. So maybe he went in search of a particular rare poisonous plant himself to start with, and then thought better of it, or couldn't find the plant, then that's how he met the woodchuck, out in nature, and then employed the woodchuck, decided, no, you're going to do this, you're going to find this plant for me. But what's in it for the woodchuck? I really don't know. Perhaps it just enjoys being brutal. An evil little botanist. It watches as the burgomaster comes along near the river where the woodchuck lives, and has to bend down and reach towards this plant, which he suspects, the burgomaster suspects, is poisonous. Maybe he's not sure. He kind of wants to keep this deed to himself, but he's considering, perhaps he'll need to get someone else. He needs to employ someone else to actually deliver the poison in some way to his decided victim. But he's just reaching. He's reaching along the river bank, and falls in to the water. Hence, he's watery. And then along comes the woodchuck. All right, mate. Do you need a job doing? Oh wow, it's worth it just for the thuggish woodchuck. I need to research these creatures, find out more about them, and see if they can be transformed into thuggish creatures who are fond of delivering poison, and other more blatant forms of brutality. Okay, I think that's enough for the first one. Time for another Exquisite Corpse. Right, who's this from? This is from Mariah. Watercolour painted. Okay, it's an unusual one. So perhaps this next noun is not a person or a creature, it's a painting. Ooh, this is also from Mariah. It's just fallen out of the sock. Pyramid. Okay, so the watercolour painted pyramid. Right. What happens next? This is from Eric Henderson with the Twitter ID magexcuse. Rolled down the hill and into the river with. Oh, that's another river. This is interesting. Getting a bit of synchronicity here. Right, so it sounds like we've got a painting of a pyramid that's rolling down the hill and into the river with. This is from. They're all falling out at once. Me! Folded. Oh, well, that's also a kind of paper or card. If the first part is about a canvas, then this is another kind of bit of paper or another canvas even. This is very strange. This is from Fraser Armitage. Vestibule. Right. Okay. So that's kind of like, that is just a hallway or lobby, isn't it? Yeah, at the front of a building. Okay, so how could that be folded? Oh, that's interesting, the idea of folding space or folding a room in a building. I love that idea. If you could fold up a room and tuck it in your pocket and take it with you, that just completely changes my view of space and what places are like. Oh yeah, I could write a story just on that. Wow, okay, I need to write this down now. So we have the watercolour painted pyramid rolled down the hill and into the river with the folded vestibule. has this painting of a pyramid been lost or thrown for some reason? Is it being transported? It must be being transported in some way, on something that has wheels, okay? Whether or not that's a wheelbarrow rattling down the hill, or it's in a car. But the way it says rolled down the hill, it makes me feel as if the car is out of control, and the person who's meant to be driving it is unconscious for some reason. And what else is in this car with this unconscious person? It's not just a painting of a pyramid. There's a folded vestibule. I think about this and time and space are collapsing in my head. And I'm not very good with quantum theories. I very much struggle with these things. But it's very interesting idea, curious, and also interesting that is the picture of a pyramid, which is an ancient thing. So I feel as if in some way perhaps the painting has captured something really ancient, and on the other hand something extremely futuristic is happening with time and space, with this folded vestibule. Which is it in the unconscious driver's pocket as their car hurtles down the hill and into the river? What is this bizarre accident? Something, I think the essence of this story is what's happened before. What has led to this? But this would be a great scene to start with. And also, as a discovery writer, I really just want to write the scene and not pressurize myself to answer the questions yet. You just get into writing the actual scene of the juddering of the car as it rolls down the slope, and there's a crash into the river. Is anyone watching? Does anyone see this happen? And what can they see of what's going on? Does it look as if, I don't know, there's something about this folded vestibule, if it's in the front pocket of the driver who's unconscious, does it start to explode a bit like an airbag? Might the half unfolded room start to get caught up in the real airbag that is just exploding as the car falls forward and into the river? What is happening to time that has caused this bizarre thing to happen? And what does that have to do with the painting? Are these two individual separate efforts to try and capture something about time and space? A painting of a pyramid, something ancient. Can you create a portal into the past with the painting? And then on the other hand, the folded vestibule, you're trying to fold up space. Would it be possible, since there's a time-space continuum, about which I know almost nothing other than that title, but is it possible that by folding up the space of the vestibule, you can also package and keep a little bit of time? I don't know if that makes any sense to sci-fi writers or to science potentially, but I know there are some crazy ideas out there that may or may not marry up with what we would normally understand in terms of time and space. Ooh, there's so much going on in here, and we haven't even thought about character. It's quite an unusual one where both of the things, the described nouns, either side of the action in this sentence, they're things rather than people. then I can't personify either of them. This is very interesting because I quite often feel the need to do that to start with. Ooh, this is interesting. I think we need a third one. Right. Let's see. Dig deep into the socks of destiny. And what do we have? We have one from Mr. Joseph Clark. Enduring. Okay. What or who was enduring? This is from Fraser Armitage. Charisma. The enduring charisma. Okay. We are working with abstract nouns. Unless we can think of something that we could make from that. The action is from me again. Oh, mine are coming up. Was overwhelmed by. Right. Oh, okay. So that is yet another abstract thing going on. Right. Let's pull out something concrete. Alessandro Bozzo. Okay, give us something concrete. What have we got? Resplendent. Of course we have resplendent, but aha, that is just a describing word. We will make it concrete with our noun, our very thingy noun. And this is from Mariah again. Cloud. Okay, not such a solid object, but it will have to do. So we have the enduring charisma was overwhelmed by the resplendent cloud. Right. I have to confess, something weird is happening in my imagination as I think about this. The enduring charisma. Maybe it's something to do with the word resplendent, or maybe to do with charisma, but I'm thinking about fashion. What if the enduring charisma is the name for some kind of high fashion outfit? And, oh, it's overwhelmed, darling, by the resplendent cloud. So we are working within a world where it is possible to incorporate clouds, amongst other things, with fashion. So this is completely bonkers, but I don't see any other way than we'd have to, in any case, make the enduring charisma a concrete thing in order to turn this into something that works as a story. So if the enduring charisma is an outfit, I think it involves a robe or a cloak. This must be fashioned by wizards, surely, who can conjure clouds that encircle said garment in such a way that it's a kind of decoration. They're combining fabric and other materials that have been sewn together, designed, sewn together, maybe dyed in various colours, with actual natural phenomena. But of course, the enduring charisma, that is this wonderful robe, was overwhelmed by the resplendent cloud. The cloud was just too much. It's crowding it out. Oh, I'm not really into fashion, but I do quite like the idea of fashion in the clouds, and things you could wear that might be combined in some way with things like that. Is there a catwalk in the clouds? Is there a big castle in the clouds where witches and wizards gather together for a fashion party, and they sip wine, or is it really wine? It's something from a big bubbling cauldron, while they enjoy the models walking past, showing off the new designs. Here comes a troll wearing the latest tree wrapped around in an impression of a very windy dress. And here comes a wood nymph wearing a river. Why not? Yeah, this is different. I wasn't expecting that, but hey, you gotta love your abstract nouns, and you gotta do something with them. So I think that's it. I'm all out of ideas for now. Thank you for listening. I hope you had as much fun as I did with the Exquisite Corpse game, and that you enjoyed your trip into space courtesy of ML White. As ever, please do get in touch with me with your comments on the show and any story ideas you might have on the exquisite corpses that have come up, or indeed any actual stories. Please send them to me. I love to hear from you. It keeps this podcast interactive, which is what it's all about. So, until next time, go forth and be inspired.